Good morning, everyone. My name is Tommy of Level Flight Simulations, and welcome to Episode 3 of the Torque and Thrust Talk Show. Danger, Bill, Tommy, Justin, danger. In today's episode, we're going to be speaking of automation in our career fields. And joining me are my friends and co hosts, Bill, Justin, and Bill and Justin.
Bill,
There they
Justin,
are.
and Bill.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good. How's everybody doing this morning? Another wonderful morning, early morning again, to have a wonderful episode of the Torque and Thrust Talk Show. Nonetheless,
Doing well, doing well. Actually had a great week. Got to meet you in person on Saturday, hang out for a few hours, having an amazing lunch.
yep.
As everyone knows, became a granddad Monday night.
Well, everybody in the
And
server knows, yeah.
yep. And last night was my Friday, and I got out of work unscathed, and here I am.
Well, not bad. Yeah, I had a pretty productive. I guess my work week or days off started meeting Tommy in Harrisburg for lunch, and then came home. Had some hecticness with putting new flooring in, which was all yesterday. It was probably one of the most stressful things I've ever done, just because it's the first major renovation to my home. And then also in the same time, got delivered a new steering wheel, shifter, and pedals. For those of you that know that I like American Truck Simulator, so got that all set up, and I'll be planning on streaming that a little bit later today. And then tomorrow I'll go back to work. So it was a pretty productive week for me, I'd have to say. Justin?
My first week back from vacation. Well, first full week back from vacation, so I'm just trying to get back into the swing of it and deal with everything that has to deal with that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Familiar.
Yeah, very familiar, right? Okay.
Yeah. So.
And this is where Tommy segues us into into the new segment.
Am I?
Come on, guys. That's funny.
Oh, I am sorry about that. I literally thought I was muted.
Ding, 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 ding. All right.
So this week's news segment, my buddy
Live
Bill is going to
broadcast.
start us off. He's going to be
There we
talking about the week, a history lesson in aviation, which I'm very much looking forward to. So please, Bill.
Well, kind of, not really. It's so for those of you that know, I had a previous podcast called Aviation Communication Education Podcast, which was a story narrative type historical podcast and talking about flight from the beginning of time up until modern age. So history is something that I am really, really into. So I figured I could factor that into the show. To start off the news segment, we can talk about this week in history, in aviation history. On October 15th, 1783, the first men to ascend in a tethered balloon occurred. It was French scientist Jean-Pilotre de Rosière in the Montgolfier brothers hot air balloon. You probably knew about the hot air balloon and the Montgolfier brothers in France, but you probably didn't know that it wasn't them that actually made the first flight. The first flight actually was a month prior to that, where they put a chicken, a duck, and a goat or sheep in there and put them on a tether up to 84 feet and put them up because they didn't know how the upper atmosphere was going to affect them. So they launched them first. And then they launched a scientist. And then later, about a month later, November 21st in 1783 is when the brothers actually got in their own balloon and flew. So that was this week in history. I kind of like that segment. So, or that part of the segment. So I'll keep that. But the next thing, the actual news segment that we're talking about today, is going to be because the whole episode we're talking about automation, right? Like automation and how it's going to be factored into what we do for a living. Which mine is probably a little more heavily automated than most, but this is talking about like full autonomous flight. So the article I researched was from Forbes. Said no pilot, no problem. Here's how soon self-flying planes will take off. Obviously, a very big topic in my industry. So it's actually a lot closer than one may think. Currently, right now, we all know that the military has been flying like the Reapers and the Predator drones. So autonomous flight is already possible, but the big concern is how it's going to play into like commercial airline, right? Because that's what's going to affect us. That's what's going to affect the traveling public. Right now, there's actually, I would say, I think it's one company. Well, they mentioned one company back in California that is a cargo company, and they've taken Cessna Caravans, which is used for like mountain air and stuff, which is standard cargo, and they were actually already have them automated. So there's a safety pilot in there, which is watching the systems. There is a ground observer, I guess, or someone who is operating the actual aircraft from the ground and interacting with air traffic control. And so these things are actually flying themselves, and but with a safety pilot, because the safety pilot allows it to be FAA approved, because there's no FAA regulation right now that allows for fully autonomous airplanes. So there's a lot of different facets, like different problems that are gonna probably end up causing kind of some delays on here. The biggest one is going to be cost. So Dennis Tager, it's a pilot of 35 years, the spokesperson for the Allied Pilots Association, which is basically the only group of part of that is the American Airlines pilots. They said he said manufacturers are looking for the next innovative technology to deploy so that they can sell it and make money, and airlines are looking at how they can do this more cheaply. And that's what it comes down to. It's estimated that fully autonomous aircraft could save airlines 35 billions of dollars a year, because we're expensive to operate. Not only because of our profession. I did make a TikTok video, gosh, probably like 3 or 4 months ago, breaking down and responding to a video about why we're paid the way we are, because a lot of people think we're overpaid, but we're really not. But it just kind of goes into that there is cost reduction, but you can't cut costs at the cost of safety, if that makes sense. So the introduction of autonomous aircraft in the civil aviation, the company is called X-Wing in North Carolina. Um, and they took an existing, like I said, a Caravan, and added the automations and stuff in there. Once the technology is certified, X-Wing plans to introduce and operate these vehicles by late 2025, and then make it available to other operators so they can give like FedEx, Mountain Air. It's going to start in cargo, is basically where it is. They're going to do a lot of their test runs in cargo, because this sounds dark, but it's true. If something were to happen with a cargo airplane, there's limited lives lost. It's more damage control if something were to go AWire. Um, and they did include a timeline for this too, on which I thought was really impressive for Forbes. They said in 2023, which is this year, various aircraft manufacturers are working with the FAA on certifying autonomous aircraft. The FAA did mention that a lot of proposals from airlines and commercial operators were outside of current FAA regulations, which makes those proposals take a little bit longer. So for those of them that are complying with current regulations with unmanned aerial vehicles, it makes it a little bit easier. Then in the timeline for 2025 to 2026, the first self-flying cargo planes will enter civil aviation, sharing the skies with piloted airplanes. It's like what we told you, those small Cessna Caravans, most likely, or the small Cessnas that they use for like Mountain Air and the smaller routes for FedEx. 2030 to 2035, small self-flying planes will begin carrying passengers on short regional flights. So the regional sector will be effective as early as 2030. And then 2040 to 2050, larger passenger jets will begin operating without a pilot on the flight deck. Um, I retire in 2059. That's my 65 mark. So that is going to affect my career. But like I said, that's actually a very aggressive and like optimistic timeline. We got to be real, because there's going to be a lot of regulation um affected with this. So it's just like, for example, right now Part 121, which is the regulations that govern air carriers like United, American, and Delta, require two fully qualified pilots to be in the flight deck. So we would have to go through a huge regulatory change to have that changed to not say that, because otherwise that makes fully autonomous aircraft illegal. Another thing is people are kind of concerned about FAA oversight, because sometimes FAA can just be over the top about certain things, and then also to lackadaisy with others, which is, for example, the 737 Max, when they get not buddy buddy, but when the inspector has a more comfortable relationship with manufacturing companies like they did Boeing. Um, They did do a survey. This was back in a couple years ago, actually, that worldwide, about 70% said that they would not be comfortable with a pilotless airplane. And then about a couple years sooner or more recent than that, I'm trying to find the actual date here. They said 81% of Americans in the United States would not be comfortable with a airplane that is fully autonomous. Um, which is it's kind of surprising. I think they did something similar with the trains, like when trains first started going fully automatic. But and then people just kind of got used to it. Oh, here are the dates. 2017 global survey. Um, found that a majority of people would be unwilling to fly in an airplane without a pilot, even if the airfare were cheaper. In 2018, there was a survey from Ipsos found that 81% of Americans would not be comfortable traveling on a self-flying airplane. Notably, the survey was sponsored by the Airline Pilots Association, which is the largest airline union in the world. So it's a lot of things. There's going to be issues with public perception. There's going to be issues with people that don't want to fly on it because safety reasons. There's going to be people like myself for job security that don't want it into the industry until after I retire. So there is a mixed bag of emotion and opinions when it comes to this. So it's really important that we all kind of weigh in on this. So what do you guys think? Would you guys fly or be fully comfortable with a completely autonomous airplane?
Absolutely not. In fact, if they bring Part 121 up to a public vote, we can up the percentage to 83% because nope. I want two well trained people with the hours and the experience in that flight deck.
Okay. What
And
about
my
you, Justin?
reasoning
Oh,
I
sorry.
mean,
behind that is computers break.
They do.
When we first started doing live streaming together, Bill, how many computer issues did we have those first couple weeks?
A lot. We had a lot.
Enough said.
Yep. What
n-
about you, Justin?
now if we think about it, we've had semi-autonomous vehicles now for a few years
Mhm.
with one specific manufacturer in mind. I'm not going to mention them, but there have been, you know, incidents where, the self-driving autonomous vehicle has caused some pretty serious incidents. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're
Yeah.
there for, one pilot overseeing
Mhm.
an entire system. I just don't. When it comes to your industry, my industry, and Tommy's industry, there are just too many variables
Mhm.
to take into account, and I don't know that we have the computing power right now to take in every little nuanced
To be able to.
to be able to support it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that one car manufacturer. One of the most notable incidents actually happened like 3 minutes down the road for me. The person wasn't paying attention. I think it was a semi truck. Um, either was coming on or swerved out of a exit lane or to avoid the exit. Car didn't realize what was going on and went right up underneath, right up underneath the semi, completely clean off the top. I think it was just one person, but a fatal accident. And
Yeah,
that was, I think, the last one before they started saying, "Hey, you can't use the autopilot anymore. You can't just completely disconnect from that
yeah,
car. You have to be attentive." So I'm not gonna go too much into my opinion because that's kind of plays into our discussion topic.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So well, I'll have more to say on how I feel beyond job security because I feel like the public needs to understand a pilot's perspective, and I'll give you some examples. And I've told Tommy about this 1,000 times with the Boeing 737, and even one of our community members, Brother Moose, who just started on the 737. I've had conversations with him about our current autopilot, but I'll save that for a little bit later. But with that, we can transition into some more fun, lighthearted news here. We can talk about some gaming and simulation news, which will Tommy will take over.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the little gaming segment. Today, I have three quick things I'm going to speak of. One, naturally, will be Microsoft Flight Simulator and a developing aircraft. There's a new developer on the block named Lunar Simulations. They're currently working on a 767-300 series that is going to be a study level aircraft. They too have somehow, some way gotten into the flight deck of the aircraft itself, took over 2,000 pictures, took measurements with tape measures and everything. It is going to be a 763. I believe there will be a cargo variant. It's in closed alpha right now. I personally have actually applied to be a beta tester for this. The key and the big thing that's going to be a selling point for this aircraft is when it's released as study level, it is going to be 100% free. There's going to be nothing for it. It's going to be a
Whoa.
freeware
Wait,
aircraft,
run that back, Tommy. Did you say free?
totally free.
Oh wow. Okay. Sorry. I'll
Total,
shut up. I'm gonna.
and it
Wow.
is going to translate into Microsoft Flight Sim 2024,
No way.
right?
Damn.
Yep.
Whoa.
They
Sweet.
are, uh, I'm sure they're aggravating a lot of people with making that bold move, but
I
I'm
mean,
looking
that's.
forward to this one.
I
See,
mean, if it's free study level, you best bet where I'm getting it.
Oh, yeah. If it's free,
see,
I'll get
it's
free.
kind of genius because even if they just do like they're the new kids on the block, so they'll put this study aircraft as free, and then down the line as they develop more, they can start charging, but they're going to get people in the door with that free 767.
Absolutely. Marketing genius.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
So the second game is Modern Warfare 3. The rename of Modern Warfare 3 because the original came out in 2011. The game is also being done. They kind of went back to the well on this one with Sledgehammer and Infinity Ward being the developers. Uh, it's going to have everything that we enjoy in Modern Warfare now: campaign, co-ops, multiplayer. I believe zombies is going to be in there. I actually got to play the early release at my better half's son's house. He pre-ordered it. Kind of gives me the original Modern Warfare vibe. Um, when you first actually spawn into a game, you're going to think something is wrong with the game or wrong with your console or computer because it starts off in black and white. And as the countdown counts down, the color fades in. It's actually pretty wild. But gameplay itself, it's Modern Warfare. And for those of us that are watching, those of us, my friends here, it's Modern Warfare. We all know how to play it. The third and quick one that I would like is Starfield. This is brought out by Bethesda Gaming. It has a first and third person view, wide open map. You interact with NPCs, and you make decisions as the game goes along, and you still have to find artifacts regardless of the decisions you make. So if you want to be in there in that game and just make these totally outlandish decisions on how your gameplay is going to go, the game will play along with you. The NPCs, you can actually form relationships and friendships. They will interact with other NPCs and kind of enhance there. There are different things such as firearms and explosives, melee equipment that you can use. And really, the choices don't matter as long as you are collecting your artifacts and you're building your outposts. This game will continue. I've reached out to try and do a little bit more research. Right now, the game is sitting at about 88% satisfaction. And that's according to PC Gamer Magazine, an article that I read last night while I may have been working. But I might actually try this game. It is an open map role player, but seemingly the map is not as open as people may think.
That's what
There
I.
there are limitations to it, and I think that's why it's hitting that 88 over 100 satisfaction right now. I think people want to be able to get out and actually like climb out of their spacecraft and explore a little bit than what it's offering right now.
Yeah,
Um,
because I think what it is like because when I think open map, I think GTA 5, right? I think Rockstar.
mhm.
That is probably one of the best open map franchises out there. Red Dead Redemption 2, GTA 5, and hopefully GTA 6. We've heard that they are officially working on it with no official release date announced yet. The close second that I've had so far is ATS, right? American Truck Simulator. That's pretty
Yeah.
open map, but that requires a lot of DLCs to download, and there's still it's not like you can just go drive and find your house. Like there's roads that are blocked off that you can't take and stuff like that. Probably because of the massive amount of data it would be a
Could
huge
you
game,
imagine?
huge game. So Tommy, do you think that because I that is the biggest complaint I've heard actually about Starfield is that it's truly not. It's map seeding. So if you land your spacecraft in, let's say, a crater, and then you try to walk out of the crater, but that's the limitation of that little mini map that you're in. That's it. You can't go beyond that,
Yeah,
right?
you're not going beyond the borders of your map.
Whereas in GTA 5 and Red Dead and stuff, now granted there are limitations, out over the ocean, but you can explore everything within, which is a pretty big map, everything within that. So let me ask you a question: What would you think that, like, rather than having this huge 200 gigabyte game, which is huge, Starfield is huge, um, would it be something like American Truck Simulator, where it'd be beneficial to have DLCs, where you start off on your home planet, and then it comes with like 5 fully explorable planets, and then as they go on and expand, so that way they can design the planet as a DLC, so you get the full immersive thing. I think that everybody's looking for the immersive experience.
I agree with you. I think this, if they decided to implement more of a DLC type
Mhm.
package to this game, I think it would take off phenomenally. No pun intended again with the spacecraft. Because I think for I enjoy role playing. I enjoy open map,
Yeah, open
GTA,
maps, awesome.
and ATS. ATS is absolutely a blast because you know what? There's no stress.
No, there's not.
You
Yeah,
know,
and
there's
it's just
not going to be someone camping in the corner.
Yep, and that was a direct jab at you freaking corner campers on COD. You know who you are, Call of
That's
Duty. You know
all it
Yeah.
is.
exactly
All
who you
the,
are, the
the
Boy
hundreds of
Scout.
millions.
Yep.
But I think that would a DLC pack would be amazing. And as far as pricing,
Mhm. A little bit easier.
maybe yeah, whatever the cost is for the developers and how they figure all of that out. I'm not a developer, so I'm not even
Well,
gonna pretend to know that I know how they price it out,
yeah,
but
and
it doesn't
Bethesda
have to break your credit account neither.
yeah, and Bethesda, I mean, it's if I don't, there's gonna be nobody from Bethesda listening to this, but I think that would be good DLC, and also a good price point. Like Tommy was saying, is one thing I love about American Truck Simulator 2 is the base game is not that expensive. I want to say it's like 20 or $30 for
21
American Truck
I
I think
paid
it's 20 something.
20.99 for it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not bad out the door, where most simulation games like Microsoft Flight Simulator, freaking Modern Warfare 3 is $70, $100 if you want the full whatever premium package that they're offering. For $30 you can dive in, and that comes with what, Nevada, California, and Arizona, I think.
Mhm.
So you can already start off, and then as you go, you can save up and get those different DLCs, or do like what I did. There was a huge sale on them, and I got all the states for like $6 a DLC. It was
Yeah.
for the same cost of Modern Warfare. I got every single DLC plus some additional add-ons and modifications to my American Truck Simulator for the same price as the base package Modern Warfare 3.
And
So I think that would be a huge attraction point too.
Yeah.
you know what? That's a massive attraction point with me with ATS. In my
Hmm.
opinion, the developers of ATS are right on point. I believe they're doing it 100%. Now we're restricted to the main roads when we're
Hmm.
bobtailing or when we're hauling a load. But one, the graphics out of the box, first download, absolutely phenomenal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Two, we can go where we want. You know, if we're sitting in Sacramento and we're like, you know what? How about we go to Denver, to Phoenix? You know, we could just go wherever it is we want, do what
Hmm.
it is we want to do. That is a perfect role playing open map game.
Correct. Yeah. ATS, developers of American Truck Simulator. If you guys are listening,
Kudos.
we are bravo. We are huge fans. Please sponsor us. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Send us a
Coming
t-shirt.
I stream.
soon.
I stream every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously though, American Truck Simulator is a game that I put off for the longest time because I didn't understand the appeal behind it, and then I went and played it for the first time, and I fell in love with it instantly. So
I
good.
resisted it for a long time.
Yeah, it's a great example of what a positive gaming experience is without breaking the bank.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
well, good job, Tommy.
Thank you. Thank
Very well done.
you.
Now, up next, our news critic or I should say, is more critical of our news segments here, is going to be Justin. I'm just kidding.
Not critical, it's just
Uh,
constructive.
Constructive.
So, um, Bill, I know you are an F1 fan.
I am.
Tommy, are you a motorsport fan at all?
I am. I am. I used to be into NASCAR and Indy racing, open wheel Indy racing.
Okay.
I have not watched NASCAR since a very, very famous Daytona 500. So I'm a little bit out of the loop.
Okay. Well, you still have somewhat of an idea of the sports in general. Have you ever wondered what the logistics are involved with NASCAR and F1?
I haven't even thought. I mean, I see the semi trucks and I see American. I'm like, oh, American Truck Simulator. But I have never actually thought of like the logistics to get them around to their races.
Yep. So I did some digging, and my news this week is actually going to be more the logistics of the two major motorsports. So we'll start on the NASCAR Cup logistics. Um, each team, each driver has their own hauler. Within the hauler is everything that they need for a race weekend for that one team. Their pit box, all of their tools, spare parts for the cars. In the front of the trailers, they actually have a conference room, and they have room on the top of the trailer. So it's kind of a split level trailer, and they can fit two cars on top of the trailer. And then on top of that, they also carry extra vinyl wrapping. So if one of their teammates wrecks a car and they need a backup car, they can take one of their teammates' backup cars and rewrap it
We're looking at you,
in a
Lance.
weekend. So each team has two drivers for a long haul trip. So they will swap back and forth and they run in a team operation. Just this past weekend, they raced in Las Vegas. Most teams are
Not yet.
centered around the Charlotte area. And from the time they left to the track to the time they actually arrived back at the race shop was about 35 hours, and that's with two drivers swapping back and forth. Annually, a NASCAR hauler driver will drive roughly 70,000 miles in one season,
Wow.
36 races.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, if you thought that was impressive, let's talk about F1 because this is a monumental logistics nightmare. So, the 2021 season, DHL, who is F1's exclusive freight partner, moved 1,540 tons of equipment. That's 1,500 tons of equipment,
That's a lot.
which includes 532 cars, and that's for 20 teams. They flew or they traveled a total of 74,500 miles.
Huh.
Each team is allotted between 44 and 55 tons of equipment, 330,000 pounds of broadcast equipment,
Oh my.
30 shipping containers full of tents and hospitality stuff. Just, stuff to put up your sponsors and stuff and make them have a nice comfy weekend. 22,000 pounds of electronics gear per team. So this is computer monitors, computers, wiring. On top of this, you have 120 ocean containers containing furniture or other catering items that are considered non-essential equipment.
Huh.
Wow.
Wow.
So, how the hell do they do this? Well, let me tell you.
How, Justin? Please tell us how.
So, this is where your industry comes in, Bill. Not
Uh-oh.
specifically the airline industry, but
Okay.
DHL commits 5 to 7 777 freighters. That's 777 Boeings
Mm-hmm. Those are big
just for F1.
okay. Wow.
They replaced 747s with 777s because it actually the 777s are actually 18% more fuel efficient.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
So on an average go away weekend. So F1 teams are mostly European based.
Correct. Except
And
for Haas.
yes. And actually Haas is their main shop for F1 is in England, I do believe.
Traders. Anyways.
So for European based races, they can load all of this equipment on trucks. It's not a big deal. But you have other tracks like COTA, Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, Miami, Las Vegas. You also have Australia and Japan. You can't drive a truck. So how do they get them there? Well, on top of the 777s and the trucks, they will also load up cargo containers
On ships, yeah.
on ships, and they strategically place different sets of equipment throughout the world strategically. Now, on average, the equipment must arrive to the track 8 to 10 days before an event.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And within 5 days after the event, all of the equipment's gone.
And okay, so is it like they have two sets of equipment? It's like, does each driver have two sets and they just send one set to the
They've got 5 to 6
that they stage across the world,
that
basically.
they stage across the world. They've got 5 to 6 sets of equipment that they stage around the world.
Wow.
What about cars? The
So
multiple cars?
they do have multiple cars. The cars are, before they're loaded into shipping containers, they are stripped down of all pieces of all aero devices. So the front splitter, the rear wing, all of that is stripped off, and it's just the car chassis.
I was gonna say the
that is
chassis,
loaded into
multiple chassis, but the aero packages, I think regulations wise, they can't just constantly change them.
Yep. Motors, transmissions, things of that nature
Yeah.
are all loaded into shipping containers, and the cars and stuff, they're flown. That
makes sense.
that equipment has to be there. And now they have a little rule that they cannot start loading these 777 freighters with teams' equipment until all teams' equipment has arrived at the airport. So if you're waiting on one truck to come from Red Bull, but everybody else is there, you're waiting on that one truck from Red Bull to get there with Red Bull's equipment before you can start loading planes.
That is a lot. Yeah.
So with all of the moving around that F1 does throughout their schedule, their goal is to be zero carbon, net zero carbon by 2030.
So
That is bold.
And I also have a little side note here that in 2022, DHL put in an order to Boeing for another 6 777 freighters.
Okay. And
Wow.
and here, honestly, here's my kind of issue with F1, because Justin knows, and I'm pretty sure Tommy probably knows too. I'm a huge F1 fan. I really am. By the way, shout out to my Mercedes fans. Max Verstappen is once again the world champion. I'm gonna get so much hate in the comments for that one, but 3 times, baby.
As a Ferrari fan, like it just
Ferrari fans are kind of like our like that friendly neighbor that, like,
you know what?
just really nice.
We are the Jets fans of F1.
That's actually a really, that's a really good way of saying it. I hate to say that. That's
like
fairly
we
accurate.
had glory days, but it's just been so long, and the way that we lose, our potential is just like, terrible pit calls, Aaron Rodgers going down, like they kind of go hand in hand.
They really do. It's like when the drivers are making better strategy calls in the pit wall, something's wrong. Something's very backwards. But yeah, just a shout out to Max Verstappen, because I am a Red Bull fan. I'm an original Red Bull fan though, like 2005 Coulthard Weber era.
The V10 era is the best era of F1 racing. Just that motor.
Yeah, and now, sorry, once again, we're really good at getting sidetracked. What I was saying is, Formula One, it's real great that they're going to be like, we're carbon zero, right? Or zero. They're also really big about accessibility, right? They want to, especially in the United States, they want to expand the sport,
Yeah.
mainly because obviously the financial gain of it. But here's my problem with that is the hypocrisy of Formula One, right? So to be able to be a driver in Formula One, you got to have money. You got to
Yes.
cart from a young age. You got to have sponsors or know people with a lot of money to get there. And then the sport itself is extremely expensive. At the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which is coming up next month, they just did Coda this month. At the Las Vegas Grand Prix, standing general admission for 1 day, so that's just a race, standing general admission, like you're standing on the curb somewhere in Las Vegas, $800 a ticket.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
$800
Well,
ticket.
and Miami was the same way.
Well,
It's absolutely astronomical to try, but I think because I looked at tickets for me to drive. I'm 6 hours from Montreal, so I can
Canadian
go.
Grand Prix.
So I can go to the Canadian GP,
Mhm.
and I think tickets were much more reasonable. You know, they were still, I think, over $200.
But it's
But
still more reasonable than 800.
yeah, absolutely.
Anytime, and I hate to say it because the wife and I were talking about the goal for my wife and I are to fly over the next 22 years and try to go to every single track on the
Yeah,
calendar.
I would love
But
to.
we're gonna go overseas though because any experience here in the United States is overly expensive. So I did the research. The cheapest race to go to is Baku, which is awesome. I love Azerbaijan. That is one of my
That
favorite
is a
race
great
circuits.
track.
It is a fast, tight street circuit. Best.
Yeah,
I love street circuits because my boy Checo does really well on them too. For some reason, not any other Grand Prix, but just street circuits. But it's one of those things. So like you have to travel overseas to Baku, or Austria is the second cheapest, the Red Bull Ring.
yep,
Um, but if you want to see a race anywhere in North America, especially in the United States, the prices are freaking astronomical.
yeah,
And and like I said, Formula One's just like, oh, we want to promote F1 in the United States, but then they charge to the nose.
yeah,
So I don't know if maybe the demographic, the research is like, oh, well, only the rich people enjoy Formula One. It's like, hello, hello, other
yeah,
people also enjoy Formula One.
yeah.
Um, so
I was seeing things coming out of Miami about like they were charging like $120 for a hat
yeah,
or $80 for a hat, and I'm like, why?
have you seen the Formula One store? The Formula One
No,
store is ridiculous. Like
I,
a simple T-shirt with Max Verstappen on, it's like $50.
yeah,
And yeah, and I was like, my wife sent me the link for Miami because they just released the tickets for next year for next season
yeah,
for a grandstand uncovered at some corner, right? Like turn one or something like that. It's $3,000 a ticket
yeah.
for 1 day.
To
And
sit on aluminum bleachers in South Florida and
for
bake.
1 day. For 1 day.
yeah.
For that same price, my wife and I are going on a cruise in March.
Yeah,
So it's one thing. Formula One, we're talking to all our sponsors today. Formula One, if you can hear this, make it cheaper, make it more accessible. Because tell you what, I'm not
absolutely.
going to enjoy that race as much if I'm sitting there going, I just dropped $6,000 for this. You know what I mean? Especially
Yeah,
if Max loses that race, I
yeah,
would be so pissed.
and
But anyway, but the point is the hypocrisy because they're talking about the whole going green by 2030, right? But like Justin just pointed out, it's unbelievable at the amount of transportation that they have to do. And how are they going to go green with that? Because there's no way that obviously, and I hate to say it, I'm part of that industry. We're trying to go green, but aviation's not green.
yeah.
Shipping overseas, like on container ships, is not green.
I mean, they've done more with the hybrid engine era.
Hmm.
So now, they're limited with the amount of fuel that they're allowed to
Right.
put in the car and you know, they're they're using more of the electronic side of the hybrid engine
Yeah, that's
to
true.
try and gain more power there. So that might, but you're not gonna easily offset, 5 or 6 777s
Yeah.
full of
Yep.
freight. Like
It's not
that's a huge footprint.
net zero is you can't recycle enough water bottles to count because that's what net zero means. I want to
Yeah,
remind people that doesn't mean completely green. That means that they're recycling and saving of the world efforts match what they're destroying, if that makes sense. The
Yeah,
net zero just means they counteract. They're doing enough programs to
yeah,
help
to
with the
offset.
waste. Yeah. So
So, and just a quick little side note: when I first started my driving career, it was actually my ultimate goal to become a NASCAR hauler driver.
okay, I
Eh,
thought you meant NASCAR driver, Ricky Bobby, baby.
No, no, hauler driver. Yeah, but yeah, they're so the NASCAR hauler drivers are also responsible for like a lot of the cooking. It depends on your team. Like there are
Hmm.
some teams where the hauler driver is a hauler driver, and that's all you're doing. We just want you to make sure the cars get to the track safely. That's
Hmm.
it. That's your job. And then there are other teams that are like, hey, we don't have a big budget. So when you get to the track, you're going to help us unload. You're going to help us in the pits during race day. You're going to help us reload. And then,
Where the crew chief is also the driver, the hauler driver.
yeah, most of the time it's somebody that helps, like takes a fuel cart and refills the fuel cans or
Oh yeah.
helps
Hmm.
with the tire guy and stuff like
Gotcha.
that.
Yeah. So
But
okay.
yeah,
Well, good man. That
so
was a
that's racing
solid.
logistics.
Yeah, that is a solid. I really like that. Don't get me wrong, Justin. I love talking about commercial driving, but for those of you that are new to this episode or maybe this series, we normally have like a comment corner that we change this episode. The segment's gonna be career corner, so we're able to talk about more than just commercial transportation news. It's just auto in general. So then, because now we have a section that we can talk specifically about commercial driving. So that was an excellent job for everybody there.
So that is going to lead us into some new terms with jargon in a jiffy.
Oh, I love jargon in Jiffy. What is jargon in the Jiffy?
So in our industries, there are some terms or words that we use that might not be the normal nomenclature. So for instance, if I were to say the word wet kit when it comes to trucking,
Okay.
what do you think of?
Can you
What do
use
you
it in a
think?
sentence?
Okay, so I was looking at buying a truck, and the type of trailer that I want to run would
Hmm.
require the truck to have a wet kit.
Are we talking full wets versus inters, or Tommy? What do you think? I'm still thinking, so I'm steam or not steaming. Steam.
I'm I'm still thinking too because initially when he came out with Wet Kit, you know what I thought it was?
What?
Spill Kit in that little emergency
Oh,
compartment in the truck. Where you got your flares and all that other stuff. Like 10 pounds of kitty litter for whatever you're dropping on the side of the road.
No, it is
um,
Uh,
not the spill kit, but good guess.
I would say a wet kit would probably have to do something with inclement weather, or maybe the ability to haul. Wait, does it have to do with the trailer or the tractor?
Both they
Oh,
work
come on.
they work in conjunction with each other. So if you have a certain type of trailer, it would require a wet kit.
Is it like a reefer? Does it have to do with the reefer?
Nope.
Okay, I'm stumped.
Okay.
I actually have no idea what, what
So
that is.
is, oh, 1 second. Does it have to do with a low boy?
yes, that is one type of trailer where you have to have
Get it,
a
Tommy.
wet kit.
Is it
Get it.
weatherproof covering for your load?
No.
Oh, I thought Tommy had it. Tommy was onto something.
No. Okay.
Okay.
So
Like,
I've stumped you. It is the hydraulic system.
oh, because
A
darkly fluid.
transmission hydraulic system operated by a PTO or similar to run hydraulic powered trailers like your end dump trailers. So to raise a
Oh,
hydraulic trailer way up in the air, there has to be some
something
hydraulic
in.
pressure coming from somewhere.
Gotcha.
So on a truck, you would install a wet kit or a
That.
wet system
Dang it.
to operate some sort of hydraulics on a trailer.
Okay, so that's like
Ah,
lifting your now, is that's not the same thing as having trailer brakes, right? Like if you had a
Nope.
trailer.
Nope.
Okay. That's because that's pneumatic brakes, right?
Yes, that runs off air.
Okay. Wow. Oh man, he
that was a
Justin
good
came
one.
swinging today.
That was a really, really good one.
All right. Well, Tommy, it's all you. Let's see if you can
Mm.
let's see if we can go 2 for 2.
No, I'm not there. I don't have much faith in mine now. so,
I mean, I don't know what it is just looking at it.
so Mine is package and go, and I think it'll clue you in. This
Okay.
comes, and literally for those of you who think this does not happen in real life, I am telling you this is the real thought of emergency workers. Oh, this guy's so
Oh,
screwed. You
yep,
got package and go.
yep. As soon as you said, if you didn't say
Yep.
emergency workers, I
Yep.
wouldn't know. I was thinking of your other job. So,
There's
My
another
current job.
there's
yeah.
another
Yeah.
term that I've heard for it called shit and get.
Oh
Yes.
my god,
Yeah.
Justin, you're gonna get us freaking blocked on TikTok Live,
Sorry.
dude. God, Justin likes to cuss. It's the inner trucker in him. Anyways, a package ago, it's where you like stuff up a wound, right? Like gauze it up and to just get them to stop bleeding, and then get them in the bus and go.
Bus. Wow. See, I'm really impressed. I actually know the history of why ambulances are called buses. But
Oh, I don't know why. I've always called them a bus.
yeah, and believe it or not, that term came out of New York City in the 60s.
That doesn't surprise
But
me at
you're
all. But
close. You're very, very close.
Justin, what do you think it is?
Oh, so I
Without
have
cussing.
a little background in EMS work. I was actually on a volunteer department here, so it's some sort of a critical patient. You get on scene, you go, oh yeah, this guy's critical. Package him up, throw him on the stretcher, throw him in the back of the rig, and do your work on the road.
Is that
Yep.
are we close?
No, Justin is dead on because when I
Okay.
came up with the term up until about 37 seconds ago, I completely forgot that Justin had experience. But it is when,
Sorry.
and the technical part of it is, so Bill, if you and I are partners, or me and Justin are partners, we're both EMTs. When
Mhm.
that patient is critical to a point that they are beyond our scope of practice and we might need a paramedic,
Okay.
and they're that sick, you get them in the truck, you start moving, you move in the general direction of the hospital, but you're working in your direction of travel to the hospital while coordinating with a second truck for an intercept.
Oh. Oh.
So you're going to have one of the most common things, and this is not a patient care issue. This is me rolling around New York City when crack reigned supreme in the early 90s issue. There are always multiple in and egresses from a scene for safety of that crew. Uh,
Interesting.
cr- the only thing that a patient is secondary to is the safety of the crew.
Scene
Interesting.
safety.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that got me kind of stumped. So I guess that's like 1.5 for 2. I give it that.
I go like
That's
a third because I saw this when I said the sentence. I looked at Justin's face
well,
and I just saw that smile start stretching a little bit.
as soon as you said emergency or something similar to that, I'm like, oh, okay, I know, because I was thinking of your current job. That I had
That
no
see,
idea.
I was thinking so too, and then
Yeah,
when he said it, I was like, oh yeah, okay.
yeah. I was like, ooh,
We had
ooh.
another term. We had another term for it, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. We're aware, Justin. Very aware. Uh, all right. So now it's mine. Mine's more PG. Um, and mine is slam dunk. So NorCal approach is famous for this. Going into Sacramento, they love to slam dunk us, which makes it 10 times harder to maintain a stabilized approach. Thoughts? Tommy probably knows because I've said it a million times while we're. And actually, Tommy has witnessed that sim controllers doing it to us, and I'm just. I'll explain a little bit more. But Justin, do you know what I'm talking about?
I
No,
got nothing.
nothing really. You've never heard
I
slam dunk?
no.
Really? Okay. What about you, Tommy?
So slam dunk is when the approach controller keeps you high on your approach
Mhm.
and you lose. Well, I shouldn't say lose, but you descend at a quicker rate for final than
I,
you would coming
Gosh.
in on a
yep.
normal approach. Bill, would that be the correct term?
Yeah. So you're kind of on. It's when approach keeps you high. So, but the a true slam dunk approach is because any approach we try to back it up with a um instrument approach. It's required by our op specs, our operation specifications in the airline. So even if we're doing a visual approach, if it has an ILS associated with it, we're backing up the approach with the ILS. An actual quote unquote slam dunk approach is when approach you descends, it keeps you high. So when you're descending, you have to descend down to the glide slope, because under normal circumstances, they'll just send you down onto final, and then you intercept the glide slope from below and then descend. Technical slam dunk is when they bring you in high, so you're chasing the glide slope down and you capture from above. And it's like a slam dunk. So they're dropping you in. Um, and it makes it extremely hard, especially in the 737, to slow down and configure, because we have stabilized approach criteria. For example, my specific company, by 1,500 feet or the final approach fix, whichever one comes later, we have to be 180 flaps 5, and then at 1,000 feet, fully configured with checklist done, target speed plus 15 minus 5, and then at 500 feet is our last gate to make sure we're fully stable or go around. That's how my company does it. But and that's planning to configure from beneath the glide slope, because with a very slick airplane like the 737, we usually get down quick. So we'll use the airspeed to help us get down to the altitude they want us to. We'll level, because we slow a lot better when we're level. So then we slow down, level, start configuring. So then we're ready to capture the glide slope. When they slam dunk us, it gets a little more hairy than that, because you don't have that ability to level off. So what a lot of times what we'll do, and sometimes O'Hare does this and not intentionally, it's mainly if they have you intercept the glide slope at 250 knots, which is really fast. What we'll have to do is click off the autopilot, level the airplane momentarily, and put out like speed brakes. So we start slowing down. And then once we get the airplane configured the way we want it to, we drop back down on glide slope. So that's what a slam dunk is. So if you ever hear a pilot says, "Man, I just got slam dunked into Sacramento," and the reason I use Sacramento is because NorCal does it all the time. It never fails. It could be clear blue in a million, and they just keep you high and drop you in. So it's a very common thing in Sacramento.
Now, are there some airports that just because of the geography around that you don't have a choice but to be slam dunked in?
No, there's always a
Okay.
choice to be slam dunked.
Okay.
It's so with airports with terrain and stuff like that, there is a approaches taking that into account. There's a glide slope or final approach fix that takes into account glide path intercept. So if you descend to that altitude, you'll still be able to capture it underneath the glide slope. So the slam dunk, generally speaking, I don't know why NorCal does it. NorCal is just it's almost in their standard operating procedures. But generally speaking, the reason why slam dunks occur is because there is traffic underneath you.
Gotcha.
So like Dallas Fort Worth does it too, because for some reason, rather than on, like, let's say they're landing north and you're coming in from a north arrival and you're on downwind, rather than just turn you to the outboard runways, because that would make sense, Dallas Fort Worth likes to overfly you 1,000 feet from the northbound or southbound arrivals to the north runways at 1,000 feet. Then they slam dunk you on the other side of that traffic to try to get you down for the center runway or landing approach. Makes no sense. Never understood why they did that, but it happened all the time when we were landing north and we were coming from a north arrival. We could always expect to pass over the final approach course for the outboard runways 1,000 feet above traffic, and then get slam dunked in to the approach for the center runways. So
Gotcha.
there's different scenarios, but mainly it's because of traffic.
Gotcha.
All right, I would say that was probably like a solid 2 out of 3, because
Yeah.
like it is hard with Tommy, because Tommy and I have simmed. He's heard me
Yeah.
say this a million times, and he's actually witnessed me in the sim a couple times getting slam dunked while we were doing shared flight deck, and it was one of those things. Okay, Tommy, my controls. Just I'll tell you, I'll start flying, and just throw gear and flaps when I tell you to, and that's and just configure and slow down.
Yep. Get that
So,
drag going.
yep, and so he's seen it in person. I actually had one live stream where I did it too, where they switched runways on us in going into DFW. And so I had to quickly get us down and ready for the approach. So they slam dunked us, and I had to do a similar procedure going that way too. So you
Gotcha.
learn how to handle it, and you can see a slam dunk coming, because you'll be sitting there and going, "All right, here it comes. We're too high. Yep, they're gonna slam dunk us." So you're kind of mentally preparing for it. So all right. Well, that concludes Jargon of Jiffy. We're doing good. That's 3 for 3 segments there that have been really good. But up next is, we kind of, like I said last week in the first 2 episodes, this was Comment Corner, where we were talking about social media interactions that were interesting. But then, especially me, I realized that a lot of those people that I wanted to talk about that were trolls and stuff, I end up blocking. So I have no idea who they are. Can't remember half of them. And rather give them a platform to um, show them off, I figured it'd probably be best to move on to a segment that's a little more productive, like Career Corner, which is what we're going to talk about right now. Tommy's going to first, basically, this segment is going to allow us to talk to you about our careers, how you get started, and each episode will progress on the building blocks you need to be successful in our careers that we've had. So, up first is going to be Tommy talking about what you need to do first to become an EMT or medical worker.
So I kind of stumbled upon this. It was the summer of 1989. I was working as a file clerk in one of the local hospitals. And when my break time would come along, I'd come out the employee's entrance in the back of the hospital, which was right next to the ER bay where the trucks would back in. So over the course of time, you see the same people all the time. You start talking with them, this, that, and the other thing. And these guys they would tell me these wild stories. And I'm like, you know what? You guys are so full of it. It's ridiculous. That don't happen. I was like, that's TV stuff. And one of them actually dared me. He says, really? It's TV stuff? I'm going to bring you a waiver. You sign it. You come ride with us. So, all right, I'm up for it. So I rode with him. I believe it was a Thursday night, and it was a 4 to 12 truck. So I showed up at their station at 3:30. They gave me a safety briefing, and essentially it turned out to be what Bill you would call a sterile cockpit. I just kind of like sat there, but witnessing what they did and how they interacted with people, and just some of the things that I saw, I was like, oh, well, this is not so much movie stuff, is it? I started researching a little bit. Now, back then, the internet wasn't really a thing. I made a lot of phone calls. I got myself into the first DMT class, walked in there not knowing anything. 32 years later, I called it. I hung it up. There's a lot of studying. There's always going to be training. It's the medical field, just like the aeronautical fields. There's always, always, always education. It's not stagnant. It's very dynamic. Um, but it was wild. Like that first 8 hours that I sat on a truck that I had no certifications and no clue was like, I won't say eye opening, but it was definitely jaw dropping.
So, so you'd recommend in order to get started for those who are interested in being an EMT or a paramedic is to do a ride along, right? Is what you're
Yes.
saying?
And most communities that are volunteer service based would be more than willing, and Justin can back me up on this.
Yep.
They would be more than willing to allow you to do observation times. When you get into the bigger cities where it's county or municipal run,
Mhm.
a little bit tougher to get into because of insurance.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah, they don't want you getting hurt. If you're neighborhood 1, 2, 3 and the shooting happens, and then
yeah.
a secure scene all of a sudden goes south, which I've been a part of, that is so not fun. I don't want to worry about some dude that I don't know that's sitting in the back of my truck.
Hmm.
Like, oh, as we're getting ready to leave to pull back to a safe point, be like, oh, we can we find the police, please? Because we kind of sort of forgot this guy. Because we know what to do. I
Yeah.
mean, I've ducked behind the diesel block, engine block once or twice.
Tommy,
So
we're not trying to scare them out of being an EMT.
it's
We're trying to let them know how to get started as one.
unfortunately in some areas that's how you start.
Oh my god. Uh, so to summarize, basically try to reach out to the local organization and get a ride along.
Hmm.
And in case of any issues or danger, duck behind the diesel block. Is what I got.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Because it is a proven fact that certain calibers will not penetrate a block diesel.
Oh my god.
But
And
one of
that'll
the
be a
other things
topic
too
for another.
also,
And that'll be
um,
a topic for another day.
uh, the volunteers, and especially where I am now, because it's very heavily volunteer based, a lot of them are looking to absorb the cost of EMT
Yeah.
courses.
Yep.
They will
Um,
actually send you to EMT school.
Ooh, that's
I know.
really cool.
Yeah, that's I have a friend of mine who's actually an EMT instructor, and the cost of his course is about $1,100,
Hmm.
and that's books included. But like Tommy was saying, a lot of departments will just absorb that cost because, hey, we're getting somebody else on the roster that can help us with response times.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, and I think Tom and I were talking about this might have been while we were gaming Was it last week that you said like 90 something percent attrition rate during the pandemic?
Since the pandemic, 95,000
There you go.
EMTs and paramedics have completely left the field. They are
That's
no longer, because an EMT and paramedic, when everyone says emergency medicine, you think of a hospital emergency room, you think of the doctors, the
yeah.
nurses, respiratory therapists. EMTs and paramedics are emergency workers. We are
Mhm.
part of the emergency medicine spectrum. We're actually the first ones, hence first
It's
responders.
under. Yeah.
You know, what and like it gets glamorized and things that you see like some of the TV shows where they have EMS involved and things like that. We walk into a mess and chaos. So we clean up the mess, we control the chaos, we deliver a nice, neat little package to the emergency room. And especially if you have a medic that's got their A game that day, 95% of their work is done.
yeah.
The
And
IVs are started, the EKGs are done. At that point in the ER, it just becomes repetitive.
yeah, so and that's another emphasis that we wanted to make too is that the EMT paramedic their jobs are extremely important. So if that's something that you are interested in, like Tommy said, definitely reach out to your local agency, whether it's private or the city, and see if you can get a ride along started. And like Tommy was saying, nowadays they're starting to pay for you to go through school because they need them. It's just like almost I feel like every industry now is at some sort of shortage.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a good time to be getting into skilled labor like that as well. Speaking of skilled labor, Justin, you want to talk about how to get started as a commercial driver?
Absolutely. So yeah, back in February of 2022, the federal government decided that for all new incoming drivers, you have to do what's called entry level driver training. Long form, it's CDL school. That's the easiest way to put it. There are some drawbacks. It used to be that if your uncle owned a truck, you could go take your written test, go to the DMV, pass your written test, and they give you a permit, and then you just go and learn on somebody else's truck. Um, the federal government has stepped in and said, nope, we now want you to go to an accredited training school to do exactly what you were doing before, which was pass a written test and then go take a skills examination. Um, the drawbacks that I see and that I've seen because I've been a trainer is when drivers come from the CDL school straight into the industry. The CDL school is just teaching them enough to pass your written or your state exam. They're teaching you your straight line back. They're teaching you how to pre and post trip to the state specifications and your parallel park. Teaching you how to survive a half-hour road test, and that's it. So you need to be aware that once you leave CDL school, you don't know everything. There is a lot of information that just because of time and the cost that would be involved with it, you're not going to be able to learn it all at CDL school. So that CDL school when I went through in 2010 was right. It's like $5,500, and now my local school is up to $7,500. But what makes it hard is the federal government, while mandating this training, they still say that CDL school is considered driver training, therefore you don't qualify for like any federal Pell Grants or federal financial aid. So it puts the cost back on to the attendees.
Hmm.
Okay, and does that and there's no degree, right? There's no like
Nope.
degree
It
requirement or
it
anything.
nope. It's most companies require just high school diploma or GED
And
when you
how old do
sign
you
on with them.
and how old do you have to be to start out?
So in the state of Maine, fun fact, state of Maine,
14. I was just kidding.
actually you're not far off. In the state of Maine, your first license can actually be a CDL.
So what is it? What's the minimum driver's license age? Is it 16?
It's like 15 and a half or 16.
Yo. So if you want to be like if you want to be a commercial driver and drive the big rigs like Justin and want to start out early, go to Maine.
But here's the thing. To right now, federal regulation to participate in interstate commerce, you
Okay.
have to be 21 years of age.
Oh, okay.
In
So they can only do
intrastate,
Okay.
intrastate. So if you're not leaving the state of Maine, and your uncle has a 26-foot delivery truck, at the age of 18, you can go drive the 28-foot delivery truck as long as you're not leaving the state of
Oh,
Maine.
gotcha. So interstate, like on the road OTR, they would have to be 21.
21, yes.
Okay.
I had seen something where the federal government was going to be trying a program, but I
Oh, that's
hadn't
right. We
done much
talked about it on
digging.
episode
Yeah, a
1.
couple weeks ago I talked about it.
Mhm.
Most companies, when you sign on to be OTR, fresh out of school, you're going to do about 3 months. The standard is 3 months.
Okay.
Some of them. So the first company that I worked for, if I decided that I was going to be a lease purchase driver for them,
Mhm.
after just 6 weeks of training, they said I was all set and ready to go on my own.
Wow. That's wow. Holy crap.
So again, it goes back to what I said on episode 1, is that right now there's no standard of training.
Right.
Once you become licensed,
Then you're good to
there's
go.
no standard of training. We're like, Bill, I know this from doing the research, and maybe you can expand on it. When you get all your certifications and all your licenses to fly,
Mhm.
there's still a lot of work to be done before you can actually, take the reins of a commercial
Yep. Mhm.
aircraft. And I'm sure
Yeah.
you can expand on that more.
Yeah, it's so you start off, which I'll kind of go into a little bit later, but yeah, it's you get all your basic licenses up to your commercial multi-engine. But that's not enough to become an airline pilot to do what I do. So at that point, most people like myself, I got my certified flight instructor certificate, and then you start time building for your air transport pilot certificate or ATP. In the United States, that is the highest form of certificate you can get. There's nothing higher than that. And there's various different things like night PIC, night cross country PIC, etc. These little minimums that you have to get 250 hours cross country PIC and such. And then you go through kind of like you were talking about the CDL drive school. Especially for the restricted, you have to go through what's called ATP CTP program, which is mainly covered by the airline. And it's an introduction. It's like a transition course between piston-driven aircraft and jet-driven aircraft. Then once you go through that successfully, now you're qualified to test for the ATP. Then you go to airline training where you're going to get a type rating, which is for a specific airplane over 12,500 pounds if it's turbine powered, or the FAA requires a type rating for it specific, and that's about 32 hours of sim training alone. That doesn't include ground school or the operations like the indoctrination or the indoc class going into the company. Then you get type rated by the FAA on that aircraft. Then you do a minimum of 25 hours with a line check pilot, which is what I did at Envoy. I was a line check airman, or not, they call them line check pilots now. The LCPs, and then that person writes you off to make sure you know that you can actually fly the jet in person. So yeah, there is a lot
Yeah.
to get to that point.
Okay. Um, After going to CDL school and riding around with a driver trainer for 6 weeks, I'm going to hand you the keys to an 80,000-pound vehicle. How's that?
That's a drastic difference. That is a very, very drastic difference indeed. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, if you guys are curious what we're talking about with the possible pilot program under the current administration, you can go back to episode 1, which is on my YouTube channel, and also highlighted, I believe, on Justin's TikTok as well. We talked about that. That was our first news segment with
Yeah.
Justin talked about that pilot program. Lots of good information in that. Well, thank you, Justin.
Yeah, no problem.
And now we're going to talk about my career. And for those of you that want a full blown view, because this is gonna, like I said, it's gonna progress in each episode. We're gonna talk about a little bit more. If you go to my TikTok page, there's a video. It's pretty far down now, but it's labeled 10 steps to become an airline pilot. And that in a like 60-second video walks through all the steps that you need to get to where I am as a airline pilot. But today we're talking about baby steps. Today we are talking about the first step you should take if you're sitting there going, I want to be an airline pilot. Or I just want to be a pilot. You don't have to be an airline pilot. There's many different careers you can do and make money as a pilot. But let's just say you want to be a professional pilot. Where do you start? And the first thing is going to be called a discovery flight. A discovery flight is basically where you go to your local flight school. Most places have them. If you go to your local flight school and say, hey, I want a discovery flight, or an intro flight is also what they're called, they're going to take you up for about an hour, and they're going to introduce you to general aviation, the airplane that you're going to be training in, and flight training in general. They'll let you do a couple turns. Like when I went, they let me fly up and down the coast. Because you're flying with a certified flight instructor, they'll let you climb, they'll let you descend, do some turns, maybe a stall or two, depending on how confident you're feeling. But just to kind of introduce you to flight training, because a lot of people think that we just jump straight into like a Boeing 737. It's not how that works. We start in four, generally speaking, 2 to 4 seat piston driven aircraft, single engine. That's where we do all our primary flight training, and then we move up and build up to bigger aircraft like the Boeing 737. So the reason why discovery flight's the first thing that you should do is because it's whether or not you'll figure out whether or not you'll get the bug. I did, and it's still out there. It's called Aviation Communication Education Podcast. On episode number 1, I talk about the bug. So the bug is basically that urge, and it's, a lot of time it's a 50-50. Either you're gonna really love that flight, the discovery flight, and be like, this is something that I want to do, or it's going to be like, you know what, this maybe is not what I want to do, which is important because you don't want to invest thousands of dollars. And when I say thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in your training to become a professional airline pilot, just to realize that it's going to make you miserable. So that's going to be step number 1, is go to your local flight school, say, hey, I am interested in learning how to fly. Can I do a discovery flight or an intro flight? Now, the cost will vary because basically they're going to charge you the rate to fly that airplane for an hour. Back when in 2000, when did I go to college? 2011, 2012. The intro flight, I want to say it was like 100 to 150 bucks. Obviously, since then prices have risen for operating costs, so it may be a little more expensive, maybe $200, $300. But that'll get you in the seat of an airplane. Give it a try and see if it's something that you like. It's extremely important that you do that because, like I said, you don't want to accidentally waste money on a career that you're going to be miserable in. So, have either of you taken discovery flights yet? I know both Tommy and Justin. I know you guys are interested.
I have
Oh,
I have not yet.
and Tommy, how was it?
loved it, absolutely loved it. Now, being an av geek before the discovery flight, um, it was built up in my mind a little bit. I won't lie about it. Um, I did not take my discovery flight on the Concorde, which was the only part that was disappointing.
What a bummer.
Right? He did allow me to climb and descend and make some turns. Um, I was not feeling masculine enough that day for a stall.
That's fine. It happens. I'm trying to
Because
remember. I don't think when I took people up for intro flights, I'd ask them. But a stall is kind of because we're not trying to scare you out of the out of the aviation
well,
field.
also too when I did it, I didn't have the understanding of an aerodynamical stall that I do now, and actually the steps. I'm not going to say they're easy, but if you're able to keep your cool to correct that stall, is not as difficult as I had built up in my mind.
Yeah, it's just training. It's actually not as scary as it.
Yeah, and that's what Joe even said. He said to control and get yourself out of a stall. He says with your training, it just takes practice. He says it'll become second nature. He says
Mhm,
you won't even think about it. You'll just do what you need to do. You get your nose down. You'll apply throttle. He says it'll
mhm,
just happen. I'm like,
mhm.
oh, like taking the blood pressure. Got it, right there.
Yep. Nice and
Mine
slow.
lasted for about an hour and 10 minutes,
Mhm.
and one of the has absolutely nothing to do with it. People say I do this and I feel free, and that was the most free I've ever felt.
It's very exhilarating.
It
Mhm.
is. I mean, it was amazing. And he had told me at the beginning, he goes, if you take over the controls, he says, one, I'll be right here. so I'm not going to let you put us into the mountain.
Yep.
It's
Two,
a good thing to know.
yeah, right. As you're turning, this should actually have less resistance than in the car you drove down here.
Yeah.
So I was like, and you know what? Yeah, totally. Because like just with the yoke, it was just
Yep. Small movements.
very very small movements. And yeah, I was like, yeah, we need to do this.
Yep. And
All right.
Justin, you said you haven't taken yours yet.
No, I haven't. I was actually just looking at my local flight school, um, to see where they sat as far as cost for the Discovery flight,
Yeah.
and they said it $125, and it includes your first logbook. So
That's not a bad deal. And yeah,
Yeah.
you guys actually can log that because you're going to be flying with a certified flight instructor, so that is loggable time. So and just make sure you get that instructor to sign off on it because technically that's flight instruction.
yeah, so
So,
I
well, I'm
haven't yet.
looking forward to it though. I bet.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's awesome. Yeah, like I said, Tommy and Justin are taking those first steps as well. So just remember, Discovery Flight. That's where it's at. That's where you got to start your aviation career. That's where I started. I did an intro flight in a glider. Actually, no, I take that back. I was in Civil Air Patrol, so I did my first intro flight was with Civil Air Patrol in a Cessna 182. So um,
I always
that's
missed
where
our
it's been.
flights when I was in Civil Air Patrol.
Yeah, exactly.
I
So
always,
you were in Civil Air Patrol too.
yes, I was.
Learn something new about Justin. This is why we're such great buddies.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was Squadron First Sergeant.
Oh, nice. I was the chief. We didn't have a very big squadron, so I was like flight commander. I was also the flight sergeant. I was also the chief because I was senior chief master sergeant and so on. Yeah. So yeah, Silver Patrol. That's probably something that we can talk about in another episode, definitely, because it was that also attributed to my experience in aviation. But
Yeah,
anyways, that's something we can cover in a later or a later episode.
sounds
Um,
good.
but that'll kind of bring us up to our next segment here. We're going to be doing a quick viewer Q&A. That way, I know there's some people patiently waiting for us to answer their questions, and then we'll go into our discussion topic here. So let's see. I'm gonna check, and you guys can bring stuff up too. Um, Matt in our TikTok live was asking, do they use slam dunk approaches for bad weather too? It's not actually in bad weather. Generally speaking, Matt, we will not get slam dunked because they're forced to not really forced, but they have to give us more spacing between the aircraft in front of us, which means a longer downwind or a longer vector, which helps set us up better. Slam dunks generally happen during visual conditions. So that was a good question. And that's the only question I got. What about you guys? You guys have anything on your side?
I just see the comment from Wayne in your Twitch. That's a lot of freight to haul. Yeah, the numbers for F1 and how much stuff, just stuff that they have to move around for each race is just crazy.
It is crazy. All right, and that will lead us to our weekly discussion, which I kind of touched on with my article, and I just realized probably next week I shouldn't do that because I almost like unloaded my entire argument and discussion in my new segment. But we're learning, we're learning. The weekly discussion topic is talking about automation in our careers. It's not really talking about like we're not really going to be talking about like it completely taken over, but it's something that's big in all our careers, in commercial driving, where Tommy works, and especially where I work because I'm a pilot. So I can start off because I kind of talked about it in the news. Is in my career time, which I retire in 2059, autonomous aircraft are going to be a reality. I think it's a little optimistic to say by 2050, but definitely by 2060. I think the last decade of my career, with my current airline, willing, I think I'm going to see automation. I don't think I'll see a fully automated cockpit, but I may be sitting next to, Jarvis over there and going, "Hey, Jarvis, you want to go left 10 for weather?" And it'll just be like dead silence. Or, "Hey, Jarvis, you want some coffee?" And then dead silence. But anyways, so it's just going to be one of those. I think I'm going to see it in my career, but I don't think it's going to take over quite as quickly, and that is due to a couple things. One is public perception, right? People always make the argument that trains are automated, but also trains are on tracks, right? Trains don't land. Trains don't go left and right. Trains don't go around weather. Trains don't handle emergency situations by themselves usually, right? So that, like I said before, that ISOP, or I think that's what the name of the survey company, did a survey back in 2017 worldwide. Majority said people worldwide said they would not fly an airplane that's fully autonomous. And then there was a survey by ALPA in 2018 that said that 81% of the United States populace, or 81% of the survey, said that they would not fly a fully autonomous airplane. So in terms of the aviation and airline field, I think we will see it in our lifetime. However, I think a lot of things like the bureaucratic process, the regulation changes, and the public perception, and also cost too, because you're talking about a reduction of 35 billion, I think is what the article said, 35 billion a year in operating costs because of us pilots. But you also have to think about the new aircraft that they're having to implement. For example, my company has placed in orders with Boeing to block out all other companies from being able to take deliveries of Boeing aircraft, I think until 2027. So, and at the end of this, we're going to have more 737s in our fleet than Southwest. And those are going to be new. So, you're telling me that over the span of the next 40 years, we're just going to park all these 737s that we just bought, the ones that
I,
require two pilots?
I was gonna say, what is the lifespan on a 37,
Well, I can tell
or
you, I
what's
don't
it
know.
supposed to be?
I actually don't know. Well, it's not what it's supposed to be because there's actual like hard stop like limitations on airframes. But just the other day, I was flying a 700 that was slightly older than I was. It was like 31 years old. Which people got to understand that cars are different than airplanes. Cars are meant to break, so you buy a new car in like a couple years, right? It's obsoletism, just like your iPhone. It's built to only be so new up until the new iPhone 15 Pro Max comes out, and then every update after that is going to make your iPhone 14 turn into crap, basically. So you
Yeah,
buy the next one. Um,
slowly but surely they slow it down.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas airplanes are not the same. Airplanes, as long as you maintain them, you can replace with new parts. They can last a very, very long time. But there's certain like airframe limitations. For example, Embraer 145s that Envoy had, they completely timed out in 2028. That's like 2028. I don't think we're going to see any 145s anymore, at least on the American Eagle side, because that's just when they time out. Um, but going back to the automation thing, it's just it, it doesn't make sense. I think the biggest thing is going to be cost factors with the airlines. It'll save $35 billion, yeah, but they're going to have to park all their piloted airplanes or wait for regulations that allow retrofitting. So, like retrofit
Yeah,
a system on the Boeing 737, which guess what? That's going to cost the company money. Is it going to cost the company more than 35 billion to do that? So, will it be a reasonable cost to replace a system that's going to cost more than just operating a flight deck with two pilots in it? So I think, like I said, I will see it in my lifetime. I don't know if I'm going to see it in my career. Obviously, for job security, I hope I don't see it until I retire. But I still think we have some hurdles that we have to get over before we actually see fully autonomous commercial airliners.
yeah.
And what about you, Justin? What do you think in the commercial driving sector? What do you think?
So, so in my industry, and for what I do specifically, I do a lot of what we call last mile delivery. It's from warehouse to its final destination,
Hmm.
which for us is the grocery store. So when it comes to automation and um, autonomous trucks, I could maybe see the long haul over the road stuff be a little bit more um, automated leaning.
Hmm.
Um, but as we've seen and as we discussed earlier with the cars that have autopilot, like there's still holes in that technology.
Yes. Hmm.
And you still have to, as a driver, yeah, okay, my car might be on autopilot, but I still have to be somewhat hands on wheel.
Hmm.
Like I still
Yeah.
have to be paying attention. And even more so for us, when I go to a store, every time I go there, it's different. It's different weather, it's different traffic patterns, different people walking through the parking lot looking at their phone instead of looking up and making sure they're not about to become a hoodlum on a Volvo. All of these variables that, I'm sorry, but a programmer, sitting somewhere isn't going to necessarily be able to write into the script.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question though. What do you think about? Because I just got my new steering wheel set up. Ka-chow. You guys can't see it because I raised the camera. But rather than fully autonomous, what about remote? Do you think that there'll ever be a time where us fake drivers will be sitting at home, sipping my coffee from my desktop setup here, streaming, driving an actual truck around?
I mean, at that point, why not just put you in the cab anyway?
Because I could walk and go use my bathroom right here and also drink my cup of coffee from my spooky mug at home. I
But
mean,
you get what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, yeah. Why not get in the cab? Yeah, I understand that part.
it, and if you're gonna, go automation, like, even like you were talking earlier with Predator drones and things like that, they're unmanned aerial vehicles. They're not fully autonomous. There's still somebody sitting
Yeah,
somewhere in control of the vehicle.
that's true. Yeah, that is very true. So, what do you think of something like that, like a monitoring type thing? So, where we're sitting, right, and I'm just sitting here watching it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, we're gonna hit that Mustang. Let me just take over here for a second,
Um,
because then you wouldn't necessarily. Then you become a technician versus a professional, like a commercial driver, right? At that point, that you could pay somebody less to sit there and be like,
it,
yeah, let me hit the enter key so we don't do that.
yeah, it would also raise another issue with the infrastructure. Is how is this vehicle operating? Are you operating via, a wireless signal? And I'm sorry, but there are still places where my cell phone craps the bed with service. So imagine an 80,000 pound vehicle, rolling down the highway and all of a sudden server disconnect.
Yeah, and actually, someone just mentioned that in our TikTok live. Brett says until there's a glitch or delay in the live feed, and he's right because
Exactly. Or
100%.
something happens. Oh, my ping. Why am I lagging? Oh, wait a minute. I just lagged into that minivan. That's
Oops.
not good.
Yeah, that's true. Or like, oh,
It's
I've had it before
huge,
in American
huge
trucks, and where
roadblocks.
my controller completely disconnects, right, and I go slamming into a Jersey barrier.
Yeah.
You know, so it's yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very very good point
I just don't think that right now and even in the near future we're going to have the infrastructure
to
to
support that.
support the autonomous systems.
So would you think, and that you said that, I would think that we may see automation in a commercial airliner before we see like commercial transportation going completely autonomous. Just because of the infrastructure is not, because in the sky it's very easy. There's no like roads, right? Even though we have highways in the sky, Victor Airways and
Yeah,
such like that, but it's a lot easier to program because it's free space, right? You're thousands of feet in the air, where you can't do that on the ground
right, right. And if there is some sort of connection issue, it can be rectified rather quickly
with autopilot.
with autopilot. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And also everything up there, it will be at some point will be all autonomous. Where here on the ground, you're trying to intermix an autonomous vehicle with like civilian population, with people who aren't. So you have that crazy factor. Because I
yeah,
know, especially you, Justin, driving on the road, there's some crazy people out there. There's people out there that probably shouldn't have driver's licenses.
yeah.
So
Can
whereas,
confirm.
yeah, can confirm. Whereas like the airline part, flying wise, everything up there would be fully autonomous.
Yeah,
So that's an interesting thought. We're probably gonna
and
see
a tree's not gonna at 30,000 feet. A tree's not gonna jump out in front of you,
it shouldn't.
or a
It's
deer.
like was it the Dark Side? It's that cartoon was like, well, how was it? How is there a goat this high up? It's because you're staring at a mountain. Oh man. So that's interesting to think though, that we may see a fully autonomous aircraft before we see fully autonomous like semi trucks.
Yeah.
That's wild. Now, Tommy, what are your thoughts on it? Being obviously ambiguous, but in terms of automation in your industry and what you currently do.
So my industry has been doing automation for quite a while.
Mhm.
Justin actually kind of alluded to it in Jargon in a Jiffy last week. We do have pickers that they get programmed, they zip down the aisle, they pick the product, they bring it back. Now there's a spotter that will receive that product off the robotics line and send it to where it needs to go via, 300 miles worth of conveyors in the warehouse. But they've been doing that quite a while. Um, it's more efficient than the machinery, the battery operated machinery
Yeah.
that we
Mhm.
discussed in offline.
Yeah.
Um, but when they go down and when that system faults, there's a problem. They got to get the IT, they got to get the robotics technicians out there, and there's a big delay. So everything that they like, hey, we're picking at a rate of 152 an hour. Oh, yeah,
Not
we're going to be
anymore.
down for 6 hours.
Yeah, not
We'll
anymore.
just shut it down. And we also do remote. In certain parts of this country, a package that's 10 pounds or less,
Mhm.
if you order a certain package
Mhm.
that day, you're getting a cardboard white square that you could put, and they tell you to put it in a clear space on your property. And you will even get a text message if you do sign up for the text message updates to tell you when the drone is going to drop your package off so you can run to the window and watch it.
That's
That's
phenomenal.
cool.
And the
That is
drone will come in, pop it right out of the belly, take off. And that same day. They're doing that same day delivery from certain sites on the West Coast. It's a pilot program, no pun,
no
on
pun.
the West
Yeah.
Coast. But
He's
um,
full of the punnies.
He's full of the
as
puns this
full
morning.
as automation in either one of your industries, no, this guy is a hard no.
Yeah.
I will run
Yeah.
for presidency to veto that bill personally.
To make sure that it doesn't happen. Well, I appreciate it. You can unveto it after I retire. That's the main thing. Is like I it's the job security thing. I know as selfish as that sounds, is pilots invest a lot of time and money right now. To lose my job to Jarvis would be not good.
Well,
Um,
not only that, one, I got to tell you, I don't think I'll be able to unveto it. I am what, about 22, 25 years older than you, so
hey, anything's possible. Maybe it'll be Robot Tommy.
they might automate me. You
It
never
might be
know.
Robot Tommy.
But
Tommy
as
becomes
far
AI
as
conscious.
I don't care about cost effectiveness. I don't care about anything else. The one thing I said it in the beginning of the show, I'll say it now. Computers break. Computers
Did you?
fault.
Yeah.
Because they're made by human beings. That's the thing.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
human beings. And another
And
thing that's also been brought up. I'm sorry, Tommy. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Justin, are you a Droid or a iPhone guy?
I am Droid.
Me
Uh,
too. Long
Galaxy.
live the Droid. Now I know Bill's an iPhone guy. My better half is an iPhone woman.
up until like 9 months ago, I was an Android guy. Okay, so give me
Yeah,
some
well, we
credit. That's
discussed.
like
We
Yeah,
just
you
actually
that's
had
like 20
discussed
now
this
years.
you
last
made
Saturday. But
you made the change to make it easier for work, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one, it was cheaper than the newest Samsung, which blew my mind. The iPhone 14, but also everything aviation based is geared more towards Apple and iPads. So it was easier for me for work to make that
Yeah.
transition to an iPhone.
and I don't blame you there. I would
And
make
that's
that
somewhat
jump too.
understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might still carry my Android just for sentimental reasons. But I mean, think about it. When iOS updates, right? How bad does it mess up your phone? Now, it's gotten better over the years, but I remember my better half
It's not
when
bad.
she had an older iPhone, iOS would update and she would lose half her contacts or something just strange would go on. And like a day later, it'll come back.
Yeah.
You mean to
It,
tell me that if you have an automated aircraft or a truck, you're going to update the system and I'm going to be at 32,000 feet and be like, oh, we need to hit Control Alt Delete real quick and reset the. No, no, we
well,
don't
and
want it. No,
and that's the thing. It's like I don't know if it's going to be a completely new system or if it's going to be an interface system where the AI or intelligence interacts with the existing system. So for me personally, I would feel safer if there was an interface interacting with the existing setup. Because here's the thing: if we're at cruise altitude and both pilots are become incapacitated, right? the flight is going to fly its pre-programmed route at that altitude, right? We've seen that before with like the Learjet with the Golf guy that got not hypothermic, hypoxic, right? It flew out towards the northwest over the Dakotas, ran
James
out of fuel.
Stewart's plane, yes.
Yep, and we've also seen the Helios flight, which is the famous one for slow onset depressurization, slow onset hypoxia. They flew until they ran out of fuel. So if something were to go wrong with the interface, I'd rather that it still be able to fly the intended route, not just fall out of the sky type of deal. Um, and so that gives them time to figure out what the heck is going on, right? Or even call make a PA, be like, is there a is there a pilot on board? The classic one, but for the AI type thing. Versus having a completely new system where if one part of the system goes down, you no longer have control of the airplane.
Well, and I understand there'll be redundancy because with you and the captain you flew on your last trip,
Hmm.
how many redundant partners does that 7-3 yeah. How many redundant systems does that 7-3 have?
Oh, it's redundancy, and not to get too on the soapbox because I know this is a huge argument about the Max issues, the unfortunate accidents and loss of life that they had back when the Max first came out. And I'm going to say this once, I may get hate in the comments for this, but Boeing screwed up. Boeing developed an airplane where the critical system tied into the system, the MCAS system. They tied it to one angle of attack vane, the captain's side, and not two. Rule of aviation is you always have two of something because if one fails, you need a backup source. And it was because of that is what triggered MCAS and what killed those passengers and the pilots on those two, the Lion Air and Ethiopian. I'm just gonna put that one out there. I know I'm gonna get some people will disagree. Some people argue that it was just training. It's not, training in the United States, so therefore it wasn't good enough. Blah blah. It's not true. Boeing created an airplane that was unsafe to fly, and it was due to the lack of redundancy. So what Tommy is saying is, and I'll let you continue, Tommy, but is that everything there should be two systems of everything.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
think back very early in your career, like to your discovery flight, right in ground school when you're starting to learn the systems of a single engine, piston driven aircraft, right?
Mhm.
There's two, you got the pitot-static system has a backup. Your cylinders, there are
Two spark
two
plugs.
spark plugs in each in
Yep.
case one gets fouled, redundancy, and you go from the most basic piston driven aircraft to the space shuttle.
Yep. Hmm.
And let's face it, the space shuttle was almost completely automated. It was the astronauts fighting from Mercury on forward that they should be in control of their spacecraft, which
Yep.
I don't disagree. I think even though computers may have a quicker reaction time than a human being, and with all this learning software and this, that, and the
Mhm.
other thing, well, a certain very famous gentleman who is big with his automation could be sitting right here right now and plead his case with me for days. And this is going to start be like, yeah, all right, dude, go get a bottle of water because you and I are going to talk about this AI thing. And I feel that
Who
a
is that? Maybe tell
computer,
us who that was. You're
Mr.
leaving me
Musk,
hanging here. Oh, there you go. Okay, I was like, are you gonna? Who is he talking about?
yeah, and you know what? I don't think as much as you can have learning software in an aircraft or in a truck, you tell me how that, as much as it learns, how does a computer get a feel for an aircraft? How does a computer get a feel for a semi?
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about it. Even just in the sim alone, right? You tell me click off the autopilot at 1,000 feet, get a feel for the aircraft. That's a video game.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be very, very limited, depending on, if the weather server decides to work that day or what have you.
Yeah.
But in a real aircraft, right? Starting back to your CRJ all the way up to your Boeing. Tell me when the last time any one of the aircraft that you're type rated in felt the same on any given takeoff or approach.
It all varies. It
Right.
100% varies.
And
I,
Justin, same argument to you. Tell me
I'll
the
you
last
know
time that Volvo felt the same.
I'll even I'll even go a step further. Real quick is that we have an entire fleet of Volvos, and there are no two trucks in that fleet that feel exactly the same or perform exactly the same.
Same
So
thing with the ambulances over my careers.
Yeah.
Same exact truck. Nope.
Yep.
Different personalities.
Yeah, and it does vary, and I think the overall of this talk show, I think we're getting the idea that while we may see some automation here in the future, we definitely probably won't see anything fully autonomous, which is understandable with based off perception and safety, and from our points of view. So hopefully that helps you understand. The general public understand from our point of view why we think automation is either one, not really a good idea necessarily, but also just the actual true timeline versus what other people may say, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
Yeah, I
So,
tell you, this is I'm 2 for 2. I learned a lot today during our show.
yeah,
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 it was a great show, guys.
It
yes, it
was a great
was.
show.
And with that,
So
we'll have Justin start closing us out here.
yeah, let's so like I said, we had an absolutely wonderful time today. Learned a lot from each other, as always. Great discussion topic. I mean, I feel like we have another 40 minutes on that discussion, but we're going to save you all from that, and we are going to start cutting everything and head out. So, on behalf of the Torque and Thrust Talk Show, I'm Justin.
I'm Tommy.
And I am Bill, and thank you all for watching. Just as a friendly reminder, though, next week our talk show will be on Wednesday, October 25th, because of my schedule. Same time, same place here on Twitch and YouTube. So October 25th, Wednesday at 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Eastern. You can catch us on our Discord server, Three Green Simulations Group. We all have links in our TikTok bios. I'm on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok, and Tommy's on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok as well. And Justin is on Twitch and TikTok as well. Different names. One's Wise Ass Trucker, and what's the other one?
Wise_trucker.
There you go. So be sure to check us out there and follow the podcast here on Twitch and YouTube, as well on your favorite podcast app. So Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Podbean. But we will see you next week, and everybody have a great and wonderful day.
Enjoy.